honored to have him. I wanted to hit a few stories that are up at GCNlive.com, also at Infowars.com. TSA continues to deny that scanners store images. Jason Douglas has a report on this at Infowars.com as well. But the problem here is they just denied a FOIA request for the thousands of images they admit that they have. And they've had the courthouse in Miami, it turned out, 35,000 images. Folks, they're storing these. It's in the owner's manual of the systems that they're storing them. Okay? So they're liars when they say that they can't even store them. They say these machines won't even store images, and we have the owner's manual. They're lying on that front. Also, at GCNlive.com, Stuxnet, it's now come out to be a so-called conspiracy theory. Well, now it's turned out to be true. Just amazing. So the Stuxnet worm that's been launched all over the world, Israel and the United States now admit that they created it, but they're simultaneously using it to take over internet freedom when our own governments launched it at Iran, and it bounced back into the United States. Also at GCNlive.com, NASA's Hansen, it says, impose Chinese totalitarianism on the world. Actually has his quotes saying how great authoritarianism is. And here in the United States and Wyoming, they're also doing it in Texas. No refusal blood checkpoints program continues to expand nationwide, and that's by Steve Watson. They're putting that in a DNA database, just like I was told 15 years ago by a nurse who was involved in a secret Pentagon program. She sent me the documents that all babies at birth were having their blood put in a secret DNA database. Even though I published the documents with phone numbers and names, the media laughed at me. And then last year, they come out with lawsuits that were won in Minnesota and Texas. And guess what? They've been taking blood from babies, all babies born in hospitals, under a secret international mandate for 39 years. Australia, England, Germany, Canada, the United States. 39 years globally in a giant global DNA database. And the U.S. military keeps it here. And they also sell it to private firms for DNA tracking, trying to isolate different proteins and things. The reason this came out in lawsuits was people would go to have a genetic treatment that companies would offer, and they'd say, oh, well, we've actually already patented, 28 years ago in one case in San Francisco, your blood type and the proteins in your blood. And they said, well, how'd you do that? Well, we got your blood. I mean, that's how far advanced all of this is. We're not in Kansas anymore, as they say. Now, shifting gears for the next 50 minutes, the last 50 minutes of the broadcast, here's the headline on ABC News yesterday. British researcher Wakefield defends link between vaccine and autism. British researcher holds true to his study despite claims of falsified data. Now, they keep running this hoax year after year against him. They pick one doctor, despite the fact I've had all these other scientists, brain surgeons, epidemiologists on who cite and write books of just test after test with vaccines linked to Crohn's, vaccines linked to brain damage, autoimmune problems. British news, British government tells doctors don't give under 5s H1N1 shot because of tenfold increase in seizures. That's London Telegraph. Now, what did Wakefield say decades ago? He did the studies, did the test, found these different antibodies in the gut. That's connected also to other autoimmune problems in the body. That's what all the research shows. He's a pioneer in it. And so they try to target him and claim, and I brought the synopsis up to him, during the break as we were getting him in there. I said, is that accurate? He said, absolutely. Because, see, I've been watching this over the years, and this is how they do it. They perpetrate these hoaxes, like saying Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, Ron Paul, we made the guy kill the people. Turns out he was a schizophrenic out of his mind dressed as a woman who hated George Bush. But reality doesn't matter. So enough of me ranting and raving about this. This is a big hoax that they're running in an attempt to try to discredit people like Dr. Andrew Wakefield. And going over his bio, Dr. Wakefield is an academic gastroenterologist, if I'm pronouncing that right. He received his medical degree from St. Mary's Hospital Medical School, part of the University of London in '81, one of a fourth generation of his family to have studied medicine at the teaching hospital. He qualified as a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in '85, and '96 was awarded the Wellcome Trust Traveling Fellowship to study small intestinal transplantation in Toronto, Canada. He has made a fellow of the Royal College of Pathologists in 2001. He has published over 140 original scientific articles, book chapters, and invited scientific commentaries. And it goes on, in the pursuit of possible links between childhood vaccines and intestinal inflammation and neurologic injury in children. Dr. Wakefield lost his job in the Department of Medicine in London's Royal Free Hospital, his country, his career, and his medical license. And the website is callous-disregard.com. And, of course, he knows Jenny McCarthy, and, you know, everybody else has been speaking out against this. But here he is to be able to put it on the record for folks out there what's really going on, what the real science is. Dr. Wakefield, thanks for joining us.
Alex, thank you very much. Great pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about your research, what you discovered, and what they're trying to do to you right now.
Well, first of all, for your readers and your enlightened viewers who will already know, the allegations made against me by the British freelance journalist Brian Deer are completely false. They're completely false. Not because I say so, because the documents say so. And you've been kind enough to put my book out there in the past and recommended Callous Disregard, which meticulously takes every one of his allegations, dissects it, and offers a coherent answer that completely rejects his position. Now, the allegations that he's made are over a year old. So why have they now been rehashed? Why have they now been put in front of the media again in a desperate attempt to stop valid scientific research into safety concerns about vaccines? Because that's what this is about. It's about taking the messenger and shooting him because it doesn't fit with their agenda. It compromises their policy, it compromises their bottom line, and they do not want to hear about it. As you rightly point out, there are a whole host of scientists around the world now who have reproduced these findings. And perhaps more importantly, Alex, the people have spoken. Last year, they did a survey at the University of Michigan. 25% of people, parents, believe that vaccines cause autism. Now, that's despite an extraordinarily intensive, expensive, and elaborate campaign against me and against parents who believe there's a problem, a public relations campaign. This year, I've just been sent a document showing that there's a local poll in Ohio, a popular poll showing it's now 61% of parents believe that vaccines cause autism. Now, whatever the respective merits of those polls, what they tell us is that that public relations campaign has failed. It's failed because the problem is real. The parent's story is correct, and it's up to scientists and physicians like me to investigate it to the best of our ability to determine what the truth is.
Tell us how you started to investigate and what your findings are. But again, just looking at it, talking to parents who have autistic children, they talk about the baby was fine, 18 months old, running around, giggling, laughing. They get that third round of shots is generally when it's triggered. I guess that overload. They get a fever. Suddenly, they go into that autistic stupor or that whole spectrum, and then associated with it is all sorts of diarrhea and intestinal problems. And so somebody who's a medical doctor who studies the intestines and the gut, why would you not go look at that and try to look at why those two things are correlated? Is that correct?
Oh, you've got it in a nutshell. I mean, what happened on May the 17th, 1995, is the first parent called me and said, Dr. Wakefield, my child was fine. They had their MMR vaccine, they regressed into autism, and they developed terrible gastrointestinal problems. And I know many, many parents, both here and abroad, who are in exactly that same position. And I said, wow, I know nothing about autism because at medical school, it was 1 in 10,000 children. We didn't know anything about it. We weren't taught about it.
In fact, I've seen numbers of 1 in 25,000 30 years ago versus 1 in 10,000. What's the accurate number? What was the old number for autism? And I know before it was like very rare.
It was such a rarity, such an oddity that no one had ways of monitoring it. No one knew. It just was so rare that it was speculation, really, about the precise numbers.
And now they say it's over-reporting, but when I go to a movie theater with my children, I remember going to movies when I was a child, there was no one autistic there. Now they might have several rows filled. I mean, now they have whole wings of public schools. Now I go to the park, and there's autistic children just everywhere. I mean, it's like an epidemic. I mean, and these people aren't faking this. They're completely not in this world.
No, and it's gone now from those numbers, those rare numbers, to over 1 in 100 in this country, 1 in 68 in the UK, and amongst certain populations, like the Somali population in Minneapolis, it's around 1 in 28 children. That is a staggering level of disease. I was on a plane coming back from New York last night, and the child sitting right behind me, who kicked my seat all the way from New York to Austin, had autism.
No, it's the same thing. I fly a lot, and almost every time, or I'm in a restaurant or a movie, you can look and see it's an autistic child, and you'll see their good-looking parents, and you look at the child, they're handsome, they're pretty, but you see them just with their humanity has been stolen from them, and they still got their humanity, but their potential, and it makes me so sick. And we're just supposed to think, oh, this is just happening. I mean, sure, everybody's starting to, become autistic. Let's ignore it. So you start researching it, doctor.
Yeah, what you do, medicine starts with the history. What does the parent tell you about what happened to their child? That's the beginning of everything. You examine the child. You investigate their symptoms properly. You don't say, your child's got autism, therefore they're bound to have diarrhea 12 times a day. Put them in a corner, forget about them, move on with your life. You do not do that. That's not good medicine. It's not medicine at all. And so what we did at the Royal Free was take these children with clear sickness, clear illness, and investigate their symptoms appropriately. And what we found is that the parents were right. The children had an intestinal disease. And when we treated that disease, as you would treat Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis with anti-inflammatory medication, the children started to get better. They started to speak, they started to smile, they were out of pain, they would sleep at night. And that was the beginning of a fascinating journey and a very important journey. And others now around the world have replicated our findings. And one of the things, I was on a show the other day where they called me a liar. I think Anderson Cooper called me a liar for saying that the work had been repeated by others around the world. Well, it has. The work with identifying the bowel disease in these children, that's been replicated in Italy, Poland, Canada, the United States.
Well, I mean, I read the international news. It's in prestigious papers constantly that they've replicated. And then they just call you a liar. Stay there, doctor. I want to come back and get into some of those that have replicated it and how this PR campaign is backfiring on them. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Gun sales are on a staggering pace. Gun prices are going through the roof, and that means desperate, vicious criminals now want your guns and will do anything to get them. Now, a new book reveals powerful secrets for hiding your guns from thieves and looters. You'll learn step-by-step, battle-hardened techniques, where to hide your guns so criminals will never find them, how to create the perfect hiding place, as well as the places you should never hide your guns, under any circumstance. These and other closely guarded gun caching secrets are guaranteed to keep your weapons safe and out of sight when the going gets tough. But listen up. For security reasons, the Hide Your Guns book and even the website may disappear without warning at any time. Go to hideyourguns.com. That's hideyourguns.com. Or call 877-327-0365 before they come for your guns. Hideyourguns.com right now. Right now.
I'm Roger Rao at Midas Resources. If you are going through a financial roller coaster because of your investment in stocks, bonds, and other paper assets, perhaps you're ready for a change. You have an opportunity to change your financial security. Get the stability and peace of mind you deserve by investing in precious metals. Gold and silver have been a form of wealth protection for over 5,000 years all over the world. If you have seen your hard-earned money lose value because of inflation, sliding dollar, etc., it's time you stop the bleeding. The answer to your problems is simple. Gold and silver will protect your assets and your purchasing power. Physical possession of precious metals, IRA rollover, etc. Call me, Roger Rao, at 1-800-686-2237, extension 178. Take action today when we are still accepting paper dollars for gold and silver. Ready for a change? Call Roger Rao at 1-800-686-2237, extension 178. Again, it's 1-800-686-2237, extension 178.
Hundreds of nations have fallen to tyranny in the last century alone. This is our last chance to not relive history.
As we're finishing off this agenda, they'll be pulling the rug from underneath Americans at home.
They have tremendous influence on our president and Congress, and they really are calling the shots.
I think it's incumbent upon all of us as American citizens to pay attention.
Fall of the Republic identifies the enemies of our nation, the criminal offshore cartel, hell-bent on destroying sovereignty and on its ashes constructing world government.
Tim Geithner, Bernanke, they're arsonists. They're asking for more matches. And the Congress is saying,